Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Daniel. We started our study yesterday by introducing the book of Daniel and giving a few introductory remarks. Today I want to look a little bit at the structure of the book, how it's organized. For that, I think, helps us understand its meaning. Now, when you read through the 12 chapters of Daniel, you're immediately struck with one organizing structure. Chapters 1 through 6 are one division, then chapters 7 through 12 are another. And that's easy to see because the first 6 chapters deal with narratives telling us the story of Daniel, things that happened to him in Babylon. And then chapters 7 through 12 tell about a number of visions that Daniel had and how he interpreted them. So you see that immediate division, sort of the history, the narratives of chapters 1 through 6, and the visions and their interpretations in chapters 7 through 12. But there is another way to divide this book or to see its structure that's not as readily apparent, but is perhaps more important. You won't see this in the English translations, but if you read it in the original languages, you would see an immediate division in the book. Now, what I mean by that is this. You know, of course, that the Old Testament, for the most part, is written in Hebrew. But there are a couple of exceptions. Daniel is one of those. Part of Daniel is in Hebrew, and part is in Aramaic. That's interesting. Now, when you start reading Daniel, in the first chapter and the first few verses of chapter 2, it's in Hebrew. But then when you get to chapter 2, verse 4, the language switches to Aramaic, and it continues in Aramaic through the end of chapter 7. And then when chapter 8 begins, it switches back to Hebrew. So you have a division of the book between two different languages used. Primarily chapter 1, chapters 8 through 12 are in Hebrew, and chapters 2 through 7 are in Aramaic. Now, is that important? Well, actually it is. Chapter 1 serves as an introduction to the entire book. Sort of sets the tone, lets us know that Daniel is in the city of Babylon, and God's going to use him there. And then chapters 2 through 7 are in Aramaic, and they form a section of their own. And there's a symmetry to how we see them. What you're going to find is that chapter 2 and chapter 7 are in parallel, and chapters 3 and chapter 6 are in parallel, and chapters 4 and chapter 5 are in parallel. Quickly, let me explain that. Chapter 2 and chapter 7 deal with a vision of 4 kingdoms that are coming. In chapter 2, it's Nebuchadnezzar who has a dream about 4 kingdoms. In chapter 7, Daniel has a dream about 4 kingdoms. 4 kingdoms that are going to arise on the earth and how God is going to interact with them. These are obviously in parallel. And then in chapters 3 and 6, we see how God delivers his children from affliction. Chapter 3 is the story of the 3 Hebrew youth who are thrown into the fiery furnace by Nebuchadnezzar, and God delivers them unharmed. Chapter 6 is how Daniel is thrown into the lion's den and how God delivers him from that affliction. So both chapters 3 and 6 deal with how God delivers his faithful people. And then chapters 4 and 5 deal with how God judges the rulers of this world. Chapter 4 is God's judgment upon Nebuchadnezzar for his pride. He becomes insane for a season. And chapter 5 is God's judgment upon Belshazzar for his pride. That's when the finger is right on the wall. Now, when we go through these chapters, we'll look at all these in detail. But right now, I just want to see how they're structured. Chapters 2 and 7 both have visions of 4 kingdoms. Chapters 3 and 6 have God's children being delivered from affliction. God delivers his people. And chapters 4 and 5 has God's judgment upon worldly rulers, Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. So you see, this is a very interesting section in Aramaic, chapters 2 through 7. And then chapters 8 through 12 are further visions that give some explaining and some meaning to the 4 kingdom visions of chapters 2 and 7. So I can see rather quickly from just the structure of the book, it revolves around 2 major points. God is going to deliver his faithful people, even from unjust worldly rulers. That's going to be clear. And also, God is in control of world history. as we see the four kingdoms that are coming and what will happen to them. And God gives some details about how he'll handle those worldly kingdoms and about his coming kingdom. So the structure itself is going to revolve around those ideas and teach us that God is in control of history. Not worldly human rulers. God is in control of history. And those who believe in him, who are faithful, will be delivered. That is the theme of the book. We see it in the structure. We see it in how the book itself is organized. Now, in the coming days, we're going to go through detail of all these chapters, and we'll see how these basic themes play out in great detail as God tells us, I will deliver my faithful people. I will guide world history. I will bring judgment upon worldly rulers who do not recognize me. We're going to see all that played out in the book of Daniel. So I hope you join us each day for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Daniel.